It's a kind of magic.
Magic, magic.
Magic,
Woo!
magic. There you go. And we're not just talking about ourselves for a change here, Tom. We're talking about our guest this week is magic. Although I must say, Tom, you're a bit magic yourself, buddy.
I've grown a kind of elvish look in my old. We both are. You're Mr. Tumbless, and I did like something, the kind of weird elf.
I would say that I look like, if I was in the magic industry, who I would be is if there was a guy on the street doing 3-card Monty, I'd be like, his handler in case shit gets rough and someone rumples him and I have to just steam in and start throwing half bricks at people.
I think I'm the fella that's, the lad with the windswept tie, and I'm just frozen on Grafton Street for 12 hours. That's me.
Yes.
I've just got
no move magic.
No move magic. Freaking the odd kid out as they drop a fucking 5 cents into my bucket. That'd be me.
You know what? There you go. Maybe we'll stick to podcasting and comedy, but we'll leave the magic to our guest this week, who we'll get to in just a little second. But we just want to say thank you very much to all our listeners for fucking listening, Tom. What can I say? Great traction on the last couple of podcasts, and we hope you all enjoyed Monday's episode. And it either helps you build a house in the future or points out all the mistakes you made in building the house that you're sitting in right now.
I've been asked for our notes on it. Would you believe
really?
that? I've been asked for the notes.
I would believe it, Tom. Your notes on that was incredible.
But I've said, nay, we made it all up on this.
Just keep listening to it over and over again.
Exactly. Just go to the
what they want to do, if you want it written out, do what we did in the 80s when we wanted the lyrics of songs. Just fucking listen to a tape and rewind it and write it out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm more than happy to help people out, as is Jerry. And thank you very much. People have gotten so savage traction.
You wouldn't think it, but I am, yeah.
Savage traction all the way back to Fred Tibno 1. People are only listening to it today and they're going, Jesus Christ. People are deep into what we're deep into. And we have more fun stuff to come.
Monday's episode's fantastic, Tom. I can't wait to hit them with it.
And of course, we are back again as you're listening to this now. If it's your very first time, you're already fans of our guest. You're going, what are these lads on about? Have a gander, lads. We're into the middle of season 6. That clearly means that there's 5 previous seasons, and we've a rake of bonus episodes with well-known folks. We've never had a magician. We have politicians, singers, actors, rugby coaches, a hell of a lot of different professions, but everybody's had a rough day at the house, rough day at the gig. This man is actually a former world champion, Ger. So trying to root out a bad one. But in all fairness, he was very candid in how his honesty when it came to having a rough one.
This is fantastic. And I got to tell you, I've never seen the man have a bad gig. Our guest today, he's one of those guys when he's performing. I don't know about you, Tom, but if I go and do my gig, and then I'm like, oh shit, I gotta get home, I gotta fuck off, I gotta go, I gotta get the bus, I gotta get the train, I just gotta get out of Dodge. But when our guest is on, I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll stick around and
if I'm on,
and there's like 5 guys in comedy that I'll say that for.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. When it comes to Jack Wise, I have to hang around and see, because he's a different breed. He's able to mix stand-up comedy with magic and good crack and high, and then he nearly ruins it by being really good. You kind of hope he'll be shit, but he's actually unbelievably good. Can swallow a full 2.5-3 foot length sword. I must ask him if he can. I doubt now he could take Conan's one down the old fucking gullet, but
he might do it once, Tom.
And there it will stay.
But regardless, hey Tom, you've gotten ahead and said his name. We may as well bring him on.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. That's why I'd make a terrible magician. My reveal would be way too early in the trick. Is that your card? Yes, it's my card. You just put it back in the pack. Oh, all right.
Yeah. But there you are, a rabbit. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, and our non-binary friends, please welcome to the stage Mr. Jack Wise.
Jack Wise, long-term actual friend of us, actually. We know each other. We've all gigged together, I'm sure, loads of times. Yeah,
Jack, it's been a while since you let me play with your sword.
I'll let you play with my sword anytime you like, Jerry.
There is
in your shed. Okay, we're not mentioning sheds. You can cut it from there.
By the way, Jack is actually a world championship sword swallowing, actual sword swallower. He doesn't, and that's not a metaphor for it. It's possibly a metaphor too. I'm not judging. We're not judging anyway. But you are you be world champ, You were world champ street performer, weren't you?
I won a competition amongst, there was, I don't know, it was about 15 acts from all over the world, and I won it. And nobody was more surprised than I. Because the show itself is a for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's a mixture of magic done very much, think Tommy Cooper, but the tricks actually work.
Yes, and you haven't died on stage yet.
No, and
you've tried.
I've had a couple of near misses with the sword swallowing, but we'll get into that. And I saw a guy at a festival. I don't know how many years. God, I would have been about 17, and I saw a fellow at a festival doing it. And I went, "That's the coolest shit I've ever seen." And I went to the library because I'm 47, so 30 years ago, no internet. There was no such thing. Steve Jobs was just thinking about it, and I got a book out of the library called Memoirs of a Sword Swallower, and I went home, and in it he describes, it's the fellow who ran away with the circus, and he talks about how he actually
right, because that could have gone a totally different way if you got a book that said Memoirs of a Sword Swallower like
that. It could have been a show in Amsterdam.
Yeah. Well, we didn't bring you on, Jack.
Recollections from a Christian brother.
We didn't bring you on to rub your back and ego. Come on.
Yeah, that's enough about the things you won, Jack. How about some of the things you lost?
Yeah, come on. Make us feel good about ourselves here.
Such as dignity, sanity.
Yeah, all of that. Like, you know what? I started out doing close-up magic in nightclubs, and a friend of mine saw me doing close-up magic, like you'd see David Blaine, Dynamo, that kind of stuff. So it's only for a group of people. And I was doing it in a nightclub in town, the Pod. And then a mate of mine was doing kids shows, and he said, "Listen, this is a real gravy train. You can go out on a Saturday afternoon and make 500 quid. Now keep in mind, this is 20 years ago." And I was like, I'm all over that. So he taught me a magic show. And and I started doing family shows, where there might be the granny in the corner, the aunts, the uncles, and it might be some kid's 7th or 8th birthday. Man, I have some corkers, things that happen, mad stuff that happen at that, because you get to see into somebody's home when they're under serious stress.
Yeah.
Serious stress. I mean, if it was a social worker turning up at the house, things would be in better condition than when you see a mother trying to get 20 kids herded into a room and fed and all the rest of it, and then put on the smiley face for the parents who they only half know. But I had a couple of crackers. Like I turned up one time at a show, and there was, all the kids were bundled into a room, and the father just closed the door, and I was like, let's leave the door open. That might be a better idea. And kids all started to sit up on the radiator, and I said, that radiator is not going to hold. And he took offense. He goes, I put that on the wall myself. I was okay, no problem. And I got on with the show. Halfway through the show, the radiator peeled off the wall. Water everywhere. Now, when that father came into the room, what do you say? I can't look at him, because as soon as I look at him, it's going to be, I told you so. And the kids are all splashing water and splashing up the wooden floor. And they thought this was the best thing that ever happened. And I had to ask him, I had to get paid. It wasn't my fault his radiator came off the wall. So I had to go up and ask him for the money. And he was, like, his wife had to deal with it. He had to be ushered out. He was just trying to stop it. He was desperate.
That was a perfect opportunity to go, excuse me, sir, could you pick a card, please?
I have one for a plumber here if you're sending good to you.
And it'll have "I told you so" written on it. They were the soft ones. I've had other things like there was one time I turned up at a show, and there was this kid, and he was just a weird kid. Like I just looked at him, and he was punching the kids beside him, and he was just a strange little serial killer. And the mother said, would you break the show into 2 halves? I want to feed the kids in the middle. I was like, yeah, no problem. Now, keep in mind, I'm like 22 at the time.
Right.
So go ahead, do the first half of the show. And the mother comes in with like tea and sandwiches and everything, which perks of the job. And Rice Krispie buns. When was the last time you had a Rice Krispie cake?
Nice.
Delicious.
I want one now, actually. Jesus.
Actually, yeah, wouldn't you? With a good cup of tea.
Yeah.
Tremendous. So the mother comes in and she said, oh, come on into the kitchen. And this one kid was in the room. All the other kids were out playing in the garden. And I was looking over and I'm like, what's he up to? So I went out, and then something in my head said, go back in and check on him. You'll be wrecking the gaff. Well, I go in and he's taking the DVDs off the shelf and slipping them down the front of his jocks. Kid you not. This kid was rifling all the DVDs he wanted. He was just taking out Jurassic and he was shoving them down the front of his pants. Now, this is a situation as a family entertainer at the time. I was like, no. So I went straight back in and I said, look, you need to deal with this, to the mother. And the aunt was there and she was like, what's going on? I said, he's robbing your house blind. Got half your DVD collection down the front of his kegs, right? And she thought I was joking, and she didn't think it was a funny joke. She was just looking at me like, why would the magician say this? Well, then she goes into the room with her auntie, or her sister, would have been the birthday child's auntie, and you can see the shape of the round shape of the DVDs in the kids' kits. You know, he's there in those. You know the way kids wear tracksuits in schools. Yeah, they just come from the school, and it's plain to see the child has the DVDs in his pants. So I just looked at her and I just shrugged my shoulders. I can't, like, you're on your own. So I went back into the kitchen and I heard them in like giving him the grilling, and I was like, have you got something that's not belonging to you? No, I don't. Do you have something that does? No. And I said, we can see you have DVDs in your underpants. That's what I heard. And then the auntie was a little bit off her rocker, grabbed the kid and started grabbing the DVDs. And I was like, whoa. Right. Even back in the 90s, you know, this wasn't commonplace. So I was just laughing my arse off. I was like, I had to be resuscitated. I had to run back into the kitchen. It was just so bizarre. Well, anyway, afterwards, when the kid was like, it was just so peculiar. The kid was sitting there and he didn't look fazed. He did not look phased. And then it occurred to me I could actually put a load of the DVDs into my magic. and they'd all blame the parent, or all the parents would blame the kid, you know, which of course I didn't do, but it did cross my mind. Oh, look, the whole of Sopranos. So strange things like that. I mean, I don't know if that's funny, but it's surely very strange. I kissed the floor as well. When a small child of 3 or 4 will be sitting there watching the magic show and they go, you can almost see it in their heads. They're loving the show and they're having the crack. And it's like, do I get up and miss the show and go to the bathroom or nah? And then you get up and there's a puddle on the floor. I remember saying to a mother one time, I think one of the children's after spilling a drink inside.
Nice.
And she comes in with the tea towel and she grabs the tea towel and she starts cleaning it up. And then she says, come on into the kitchen. And she goes, and I'll get you something nice to eat. And she starts wiping the plates down. But the corporates then, like, as time went on, a mate of mine booked me into the halfpenny, and I'd been doing close-up magic in the pod for maybe 2 or 3 years, and my mate booked me in and didn't tell me, and got on to Tony, and then turned around and said, look, in 2 weeks time you're doing 10 minutes or 7 minutes on stage. And of course, like anybody, you crap yourself, you know. Going on stage is completely different to walking up to a table.
I think Jack has spilled a drink there.
Yeah.
it would have been a tea towel moment. And that's where I got into doing stand-up. I mean, I always say I'm a magician who does a bit of comedy. I'm certainly not a comedian who would do magic. I think it's the other way around. Come on. And I'm sure a lot of the comedians agree. They're all like, not at all, Jack. But I've done some horror corporates. Whoa.
Come on.
Desperate corporates. And at this stage, I pride myself, and this sounds arrogant, that I have a fairly bulletproof corporate set. Like, right. I know, but I've gone through a desperate learning curve.
Well, I would say, Jack, now, knowing, and I've seen you said a couple of times, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure a lot more people want to see magic. Even bored corporate types would have more interest in magic than they would in myself and Tom's recollections of what it's like to be a coachie in the city.
Well, firstly, when you walk on stage and say you're a magician, you can see people rolling their eyes. They're like, oh, Jesus, whose idea was this? And the booker, whoever it is, if there's a social committee or if there's somebody in HR, I can actually see their faces dropping when I walk out on stage because they're wondering, how's this going to go? Unless they've seen the act and they know. But, you know, and I wind them up sometimes. Like when I'm backstage at an event and if they're planking themselves, I go, like I start just for my own amusement, I might turn to the event manager or whoever's booked me and go, I do this thing with the Mankini and I think it's gone. And they just look at you like, what? I go, it's hilarious. I got it on under this. I said, I'll do it for you. I'll do it. Right. And you can just to dick about with them, you know? So there's a few things like that I do. It's just other stuff.
I kind of want to see that though now. To be honest.
You know, I don't have any Mankini bit, but the expression on their face, it's like a joke you do just for yourself.
Yeah.
Which I think almost every comedian has something where you do it just for your own amusement. And you can even see the crowd go, what the fuck was that about? You know? But it's one of those things that you like
90% of my set there, Jack. Yeah.
There you go. It's like as long as I'm entertained and you get paid for it. So I did one in the round room. Even now, when I go into the round room in the Mansion House, I like my arsehole starts eating my underpants. Just here. I have like, it's almost like a flashback. I can almost feel now myself beading with sweat even thinking about it because it's a big ass room. And I remember walking in and I'd already been on to the event manager and I said, yeah, no problem. And it was maybe a 25-minute set they wanted me to do. And I said, look, the one thing is just make sure that stage isn't on the other side of the dance floor. That's the only thing. Now, for anybody, and I'm assuming quite a lot of comedians, performers are going to be listening to this, you know what it's like if you walk into a room and if there's the bigger the gap between you and the audience, the harder you have to work. Yeah, the further that audience is away from you, the harder you've got to work because you've got to make it project. Whatever you're doing, particularly with magic, they're going to be able to see it. It's like, it's not magic if they'll be wondering about it. You know, there's no magic in it. So this woman had put the dance floor, of course, on the other side or put the stage on the other side of the dance floor. So I walked into the room. I was just like, oh my God. And I walked on stage. And I did my set, and about 3 minutes in, I hear one person going, quite deliberate. If you've never been on stage, imagine trying to have a conversation with somebody across an Olympic swimming pool, and that's what it was like for me. So I then about 2 minutes after that, one lad shouts up, "Get off!"
How to misinterpret that?
Yeah, there's no misinterpreting. So I just looked at them and I said, "I'm not going anywhere because I'm getting paid tonight." Right? And I said, "Now this is going to be as bad as you like," but I said, "The show must go on." Right? And I just went through it, and it was the most wilting. It was the most humiliating because, again, they couldn't see. There was like the lighting was off, everything was off. And on reflection, I blame myself. Like I talked to a pal of mine who's he's now 78, stage hypnotist, Barry Sinclair.
Oh yeah.
If you've seen Barry's show, I mean, he hasn't been on the road doing it for quite a few years, but it was a killer show. Did the college circuit, he did pubs, he did everything. He did like Cork Opera House, he did everywhere. He was out in Vegas, the whole lot. And he turned to me anyway, and as soon as I told him, I went, "Whose fault was that?" And I was like, I'm guessing it was mine. And he had the answer straight away. He said, "Why didn't you get a chair and go up and stand in front of that audience and get up on that chair?" And I said, "Are you for real?" And he went, "Get up on a chair until you get the audience, then step down off the chair. And if you lose them, get back up on the chair." Now, fast forward about 2.5 years later, I went to a GAA club, same thing happened. And I got a chair, and I got up on that chair, and they all stared at you like, "Who's the dick on the chair?" Who's the dick on the chair? But then you just start rattling it off, you know, and you start shooting a few lines at whoever's in the room, whatever's going on, you know. And I got them, and then I got down off the chair, and when I felt they were going again, because you know that point when you're doing doing a show, and maybe they've been listening to 40 minutes of speeches. They've had a 3, maybe a 4-course meal. They're feeling tired. They're sleepy. The older lads want to go for a pee, but they're too scared to get up in case you rip into them.
Yeah.
As they walk across to go to the gents. And I could feel back up on the chair. And Manny saved me at that bit of advice. So if you're ever at a corporate and if you're too far away from the audience, lads, just grab that chair. And don't be shy. You have to make it look like it's completely natural, like you do it every show. You have to look. This is part of your set. You can't do your show without standing on a chair.
I had something similar in that. It didn't come to me consciously. I actually snapped inside my head. Something broke inside my brain, and
that's what it feels like.
It was
that was your humility.
Oh yeah, completely. It was gone, and thankfully it was a radio mic, so I just marched down to him. It was like, this has to happen because I'm getting paid. And I know they all hated me. They hated each other. No, it was a Christmas party with a company that despised each other. It was just bleak from beginning to end. But
you just want to shower afterwards. You just feel dirty, don't you? You just feel.
I tend to drive with the windows down just to see, can I get the funk off me from the.
But for anybody,
I must be the only one among us here with no shame, because that shit just washes over me.
How do you do it, Jerry?
Just pure ignorance.
It's called Jack. It's called Monaghan. It's a thing.
Pure dog ignorance. PDI carries me yards.
And how do you describe, lads? Because for anybody who's listening to this and they've heard all the horror stories, have any of you described what it's like to die on stage for somebody who hasn't gone on stage? How would you?
Well, we've given 5 seasons worth of examples. Hence why we brought in the bonus situation where we said, well, people have heard enough of our hell. And typically it's in a place that it's not like, there is no magic club, but there are comedy clubs where you will never die in your hole. It's typically in places where people don't want it to be. You know, that's typically where it all goes to hell in a fucking handbasket. But to try and describe it's almost like the vacuum. There's this vacuum where you go, you know, you see it in a movie where like the camera rushes backwards down a tunnel.
Yeah.
And everything else, all the good stuff is at the fucking light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, well, right, I suppose we better
go with this. I've always said, I don't know whether it's the answer to your question, but I've always said that the feeling of telling a joke on stage and nobody laughing at it is the same feeling you get when you're walking down the street and you see somebody coming towards you and they wave at you and you wave back, and then you realize that they were waving at someone behind you.
Continuously. It's just continuously happening for the full set.
It's that same feeling. You might only get that feeling like 5-6 times in your whole life of waving at somebody that was waving at someone behind you. Whereas like they're embarrassed for you, you're embarrassed for yourself. You know they're gonna fucking talk about you. You just have this horrible fucking sinking dread feeling that I tried to do something incredibly simple, and this is how this fucking day turned out. It's that feeling continuously for 20 minutes.
That's a very precise description. It's intense foolishness.
You'll either, if you don't have a condition going into this game, then you definitely will have a condition, you know, halfway through this carry on, like expecting people and these situations to work out well every single time. It ain't gonna fucking happen. But I mean, you cut your teeth also with street magic. Yeah. I mean, was that any easier than, like, could you control it better, or could you just fold your case up and walk away?
Yeah, but with the street show, if it's like I've done little busking, even though I won a big street show competition.
Right.
I've done little, but the reason is the reason I mentioned the family shows earlier is because if you can entertain a room full of kids and adults, and if you can do a proper Dublin working class family communion party where the audience, like in a pub, where the kids are off their bangers on sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the adults are drunk or maybe just off their bangers on whatever else that's, you know. And if you can walk into that place and you can do a show and you can survive, there's not a lot you can't do. It's the same with street shows. It's like street shows are designed, when you see a guy go out and he does a straitjacket escape, there's a big promise where you promise, I'm going to, whether it's swallow a sword, get out of the straitjacket, whatever it is. And people are like going, well, go on then. It's like, but it's a big build. All the jokes, all the bits of business are the build. Now, I've seen lads die on the street. I've died on the street when I did street shows down in Galway. And that's okay because there's no commitment on your part. It's like you get paid what you're worth. And when you go out and do a street show, but I love doing festivals because they want you there. The festival audience, you walk out and there's 300 people sitting in a park, or I mean, it's wonderful. And you've got adults, you've got kids. I've had a dog run across and piss into my bag. It's all over the magic props. And that happened. And they all looked and laughed, and they thought, like, you could see them looking, going, "Is this part of the show?" You know.
It would be seriously good.
You're slipping the dog a boneo at the end of the show, going, "Good boy, that was it. Well timed."
I mean, it'd be a great closer all the same, wouldn't it? Every time just the dog come up and take a piss.
But if you could do a double clap and the dog came in, snap your fingers and the dog comes out and hoses all your gear down. I did a festival in Fredericton, which is in Canada. It was a jazz festival, and myself and a mate who's a whip cracker, a world-class whip cracker. I mean, this guy gets
wonderful.
2 unicycles, he soaks both whips in paraffin, sets them on fire and cracks them, and like you get a ball of fire coming off them. It's wonderful. Well, he'd done his show. I was about to start, and the circle of people were already there. What you'd call it, like the tip, were already there. The people gathered, but there was a tree overhanging from the park. You know, it was a kind of a street surrounding a park. And I'm starting my show, and next thing, a squirrel dropped out of the tree. And because the people were so tightly packed, that squirrel did about 5 rounds of the street, like the area where I was, the pitch, we'd call it, going around the pitch, trying to figure out, because all these people just bundled in, and all the people were looking at me. So it was just like, you don't have a job. I mean, there's no improvising, because you could never possibly think that a squirrel would sort of skydive into your show. It was so surreal. Everybody was looking at me. I was just like, I don't know either. You know, I would have, on reflection, I should have snapped my fingers. Yes. Ta-da. But what do you do?
Get in the hat, you bastard.
I'm not getting the hat. You get eating that bastard hat.
So
that was another cracker.
Something you do that, not that it freaks me out, but it's something that comedians wouldn't typically do, even in the comedy club, is that you bring people on stage for, you know, live interactions with them. Like, has there ever been a moment where, because I mean, you take the absolute mickey, like, even though they seem to end up having a good time at the end of it, but you do take the mickey. That we've seen. Was there ever a time where a fella, you know, or a woman were like, not fucking happening tonight, Jack? Nah, no way.
I've had people so drunk in the laughter lounge. I've had 1 or 2 guys. Now, usually the lounge is I think, as a comedy club, I think it's tightly run in that.
Yes.
You know, there's not a lot of dicking about, and if there's somebody too drunk, they'll get rid of them. Sometimes you'll get maybe Christmas parties, but I remember getting a guy up on stage and he was just locked. And when he was coming up, he was one of those fellas who looked like he had his shit together. He was nicely decked out, and he was wearing all his swanky gear and his nicely ironed shirt. And then he got up on stage, and it suddenly became apparent to myself and the entire audience, this guy was absolutely comatose. And he started, like, he was facing the wrong way. He wasn't even looking to the tube. The audience are over here. So I had to sort of there was another guy in the audience. I said, do you want to give me, and we had to sort of walk him back down into a seat. It was like he became a pensioner from alcohol. He needed to be sort of walk slowly down the steps, making using phone. He's going to break his hip, sit him back down. But most people, when I get them up on stage, I could do this voice throwing thing, which dates back to when amplification first came into existence. I mean, ventriloquism's around for thousands of years, but the thing with the throwing the voice, where I ask people questions, and they're questions that there's really only 1 or 2 answers to. So I'd say, enjoying the show. They're either going to say yes or no. Yeah. And sometimes they'll hum it. They go, And because I have the microphone, I just, for the benefit of the people who are listening, because their voices aren't as loud as mine with the microphone, I will give them, via ventriloquism, I give them a voice, a stupid voice. So I answer for them. And it's good crack. But the mask is a different thing. The mask dates back to maybe the 60s, and a lot of acts have done it. And I remember seeing it, and I said, I wonder, could I get one of those made? And I got it. That's the thing, where a mask with a movable jaw, and there's a brake cable on it, and I just get them doing stupid shit like head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, YMCAs, things like that. Very few times has it gone wrong. Like, because I'm watching their eyes.
Yes.
Watching their eyes. And when you get to look on stage, and I'm looking and I can just see how much I can push them. Right. I'm like, look at them. I had one guy when he put on the mask and he was swearing. He was swearing behind the mask. He was like, I'll fucking kill you. I'm gonna get you in the car park. Like, right behind the mask. So I did what's called a mic whisper. Like you drop the mic in a kind of a casual gesture to one side, and then I let them have it. When the mic's away, I go, listen, like, just play along. They're gonna love you. They'll love you for it. And then I went bring the mic back up, and then I continued the conversation. And the audience are unaware of it because of the ventriloquism part. I can talk to them without the audience hearing or seeing that I'm talking to them. Which actually reminds me, I must tell you about the prompting thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. Because of the ventriloquism, you can get kids to do mad things on stage. Because I can say things to them with the mic out of the way.
Of course.
I'll go, open your mouth, and the kid will stand there with his mouth open. And then I look at him and I talk into the microphone. Like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? And everybody starts laughing at the kid. And then I say, close your mouth and stop. I need you, right? And then I drop the mic to one side as I'm gesturing towards the audience, and I ventriloquism again. I tell him, open your mouth. So he opens his mouth. And I was at one communion, and the kid was decked out in this suit, which had obviously been made for him.
Right.
These people have put a lot of money into this, and I'm not going to say they look like gangsters, but they look like gangsters.
They were definitely gangsters.
Yeah, a lot of money in this suit. So I was like, so I started doing the open your mouth to the kid, and the kid's opening his mouth, and then I turn around. What are you doing? Close your mouth. It's ridiculous. Stop acting the maggot, and then open your mouth again. Then I said to him, lie on the ground. So the kid starts to lie on the ground, and the mother is, and then I looked over him, I'm like saying into the microphone so the audience can hear, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? To the poor child. I said, get up off the floor. Are you mad? So the kid gets up. I drop the mic again as I'm picking something off the table. I go, lie down again. Lie down. The kid lies on the floor. And then I said to him, roll around.
In his custom suit.
Yeah, in his custom suit. And the mother lost her shit. She ran out of the crowd, grabs him and starts cuffing him around the side. And then he looks up and he goes, the magician told me to do it. I said, how dare you? So she cuffed him a bit more. Did any of that
didn't think there was any rats in this family, but here we are, you little tout.
Yeah, but I actually felt sorry for him because the mother so overreacted, she went mad. But the voice throwing thing is interesting. It's interesting what you can do with it. The mask, I had one fella threaten me. He said he was going to get me in the car park, and that's now a thing I put into the script. Like when I put the mask on somebody, with the moving the jaw, I actually get him to say, I'm going to get you in the car park. Or if I'm doing gigs up north, I say, you'll never make it to the border.
Perfect.
They love that, It's like, and so things like that, it's sometimes from the dreadful moments come the best things,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It does teach you a lot about yourself as a performer. Like once you put your confidence back together, and actually for anybody who's been on stage and died, that the next gig after you have died is a hard gig. You're facing the demons on stage again, and you're walking out and you're kind of going, you're shaky, it's rattled. It's for me personally, I don't know about you guys,
but also conversely, if that gig ends up being lovely, it's not just lovely, it's fucking euphoria.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's it. Euphoric. It's just like, just put your ego back together.
I did a gig immediately. It's possibly one of my, not the most dangerous gig I did, because I did a gangster gig as well, but I did a gig for our illustrious Garda Force here in their college, and it wasn't good, Jack. I'm not going to get into it. It was very not good.
Do get into it. I want you to get into it.
I think it's season 5, episode 3. I think I'll send it on to you, Jack.
Okay.
It's
we don't have
45-minute segment in there all about.
We don't have the time. It took nearly an hour to tell it, but it was bleak.
It was grim.
Grim. And the following night, I did a small little club down in Ballincollig in Cork, and I found myself sitting on the stool that was on stage and telling them the entire story. And we had such a good, it was this cathartic moment where it's like, thank God Thank God I had G the following night to actually do this with, because
Lovely.
it was like a virtual hug from everybody. It was like, that I'm still not fucking right over it. Like, it was so terrible.
And they just were they staring at you or were they heckling you?
There was so many factors at play, Jack. To say that I shouldn't have been within an ass's roar of that, no comedy had any place there. They didn't want to be there. Nobody wanted me there. It was, even when they were there, they weren't really there. They were still 80 feet away trying to get drunk. It was just not good. It was, like I said, it's I go into deep depth. I'll actually send you on the episode so you'll go,
With that being said, like in the Garda training college with Tom on stage, immediately just get the air of suspicion that there's 12 other coaches robbing the place.
Out the back,
Climbing in windows. Like,
a bunch of fucking DVDs down the front of their jocks as well. Yeah. Just... Jack Wise, thank you very, very much. Tell me, have you any live shows? I know we had some great news this evening as we're recording this. Where can people find you, or what's happening next?
Well, the corporates are starting to slowly come back. I've been doing Zoom shows, which have their own issues. They're a strange one. And actually, I've sort of enjoyed them. I mean, the audiences seem to. I got more business, so there's word of mouth business out of it. So obviously they're enjoying it, but it's a very different world with the Zoom. Corporates are starting to happen. Weddings are back. Okay, you know what? If you want to make a fortune now, for the benefit of any audience member who's just listening into this, no idea. It's 31st of August, 2021, and we're just coming out of the pandemic. And the people who are making the most money are people in the marquee rental.
Oh, Jesus.
Business. Unbelievable. The amount of sneaky weddings and things that are going on around the country. These guys are making an absolute killing.
Them and like whoever had the foresight to start bringing clear perspex sheets into this country about a year and a half ago, because there's only a handful of companies who are actually bringing in that stuff. Clear perspex. Oh my Jesus, 'tis in every place now, and it'll never go away because you wouldn't, because it costs a fortune. You're never going to throw it out now. You just keep a sneeze guard up in front of every desk from here on out. Yeah, you're 100%.
Like your man said in The Graduate, he just walked up to Dustin Hoffman and said, "I got one word for you: plastics."
Yeah, exactly.
Cha-ching. What advice would you give? Maybe this is something you haven't covered in all of the episodes. What advice would you give to somebody who's walking on stage to make sure they don't die? Or maybe this is counterproductive because then you're going to have less people coming onto your show telling about their nightmare stories. Maybe we should keep those secrets to ourselves.
I don't know if there is a secret.
Jack, if we knew the fucking key to that, would we have a segment called Worst Gig Ever? We've kept running for 5 years.
I don't think there's an avoidance, because typically it happens as a result of something outside of your control. Like, like I said, in a comedy club, it rarely happens because it's very controlled affair. Like, but if it's all you can do, and as we've learned, is all you can do is glaze over and like that, force the issue, drag the fucking chair to them, be professional and horse through it, because you ain't beating me, you guns.
It's interesting because, as you were saying, it's like when the audience are committed to it in a comedy club, it's not an easy sell. But it's a whole lot easier because they've paid to go in, which means they've made a financial commitment and they want to enjoy the show.
Yeah.
But when you turn up at a corporate or an event where it's like, oh yeah, let's get a comedian, and everybody's sitting there and they're like, you're like a professional interruption.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect description.
A wonderful phrase.
Brilliant description. A fucking professional interruption. Wow. That's Jesus Christ. That's a perfect description of it.
Well, when I was doing close-up magic, I'd walk around and you'd often say to people, "I'm here to interrupt for a while. How am I doing so far?" And who's this? But that's close-up magic, and you might do. And actually, close-up magic's an interesting thing because when you walk every time you walk up to a table, you're basically back on stage.
Yeah,
you're doing a new set. So you might do 20 gigs, going around 20 different tables. And you test openers, you can go up to people and you can just come out with just like great, even just standing looking at people. So, how are you?
It's like fucking speed dating, so it is.
And things like that, you can just mess around with them. But I think you can only do that when you get to a certain thing. It's like when you walk on stage in a comedy club, you can really push it because you're confident. You've got it. You got to learn the rules before you can break them. Once you know them, you can break them. But the corporate end of it, they look at you and they go, "Nah, rules are different tonight."
Yeah, but you have to remember they don't like each other either. So, for the most part,
I quite like corporates. I enjoy now because I see them as a challenge. Like I walk into the room, I bring a small fold-out stage. Like I have a small fold-out stage. I have my own follow spot, proper full-on follow spot.
Wow!
And I don't pay anybody to do my lighting. I get some asshole out of the audience, right? I even say it. I walk up, I go on stage. The light is set in one area. I'll have set it beforehand. And actually, you can set a light. You can put your hand over the front of it, and you can put it on a tripod in one corner of the room. When they're actually in the room, and it diminishes the light. So you can just see the silhouette of the light, if you can imagine what I'm saying, on the wall, but it's not blinding. And then I fold out the stage. It's a small collapsible stage. I fold it out. Now you can be seen and heard. But the light, I get some lad. I got up the lighting engineer. We got him from the job centre, and he's actually asleep in the van. I said, it's not he's desperate. I say, and I have the microphone, and I'll just say, would you mind obliging us? And just whenever I move, if you could just move it, because you look quite a competent individual. And then I turn off the mic and I just go, fuck it up completely. And they're already laughing, because I start moving and he goes the opposite direction. And then I go over to him and I square up to him, like, what's your problem? Like why when they're paying all this money? Why? And then if there's a kid in there who's just doing work experience, like if you see the youngest lad, like the boy, and he's 17, I go, come here, you. How old are you? He goes, 17. And then the other lad, the older fella, I go, how old are you? And he'd be like 47. And I'm like, okay, you sit down, come here, you. And then I just say, follow me when I do it. And then I go over to him a couple of times during the audience or during the night, the older lad, and I go, now, do you see what he's doing? And he's only 17. Work experience. Is that who's doing the work experience? I said, I don't think the only thing you'll be getting back, it's a P45 or whatever.
Beautiful.
And it does work, but it's taken a long time to figure out all those little things. And some corporates I don't know. I did a gig at a wake.
Beautiful.
All right, okay. Now, you thought we were going to let you go before we fucking hear this one, Jack.
It was close-up magic. I wasn't on stage, and the guy saw me while he was alive, and he was really into it. He was great crack, and he got all the gags. When you just see a fella, and they shake with laughter, and he's really into what's going on. And he says, I'm going to get you for a very special party. And I was like, great, okay, great. Well, I didn't know that the fella, about a year and a half later, he died. And he had said, I want this lad at my wake. I kid you not. So I turn up and I turned
Jack.
up. They booked me. They said this was one of his things he wanted. And I was like,
he got a black suit. I mean, he does have a black suit. So,
I mean,
it was the first half an hour of that. Like I was waiting because I knew as soon as they get drunk, it'll all ease up. But I have to wait. So the guy was going, you're not going to go, would you not go around now? And I said, no, I said, I'm not going anywhere else tonight. I'll wait this out. And then I went out, and the first few tables were so strange. I said, I know this is in very bad taste. I said, but it's not my bad taste. It's your man in the box. I said, because he booked me. He enjoyed the show, what I do. So will you entertain me for a couple of minutes? And if you don't, you can throw the sandwiches at me. I said, because I know this is it, but it's no weirder for you than it is for me. And after I did one or two tables, and you saw people starting to laugh and everything, but when there's that, it's gone past that point at a wake or something like that where they've had a drink or two, and then people start to chat, and there's a bit of crack.
Yeah.
And I was there, but I was really nervous. It was kind of sick.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I've just got one question, Jack. One question out of all that. Who'd you put the mask on?
No. Prop him up.
Was it?
Prop him up.
That would have been.
And welcome on the stage, the widow. Now, I just want you.
We do a scene from Weekend of
It
Bernie.
was just a weekend of Burns.
Strings on him.
Let me out of here! Let me out of here!
It was just, oh man, it
Jack
was.
Wise, that has been
Yeah, pleasure,
absolutely.
lads.
That has been glorious. Thank you very, very much for coming on. So now,
Thanks a million for having me on.
we had to root through it because Jack normally nails these, but we knew the diversity of the things he'd seen, the wars that he's seen, that he would have seen a couple. Anyway, I can't wait for the Mankini tour. That's really what I'm.
Oh yeah. I'm just gonna.
Chekhov's Mankini. You don't mention it and then not wear it.
I'll put it on if you'll manscape me.
That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Look at us, for God's
A
sake.
rural man, no problem. I'll share that.
It'll be diesel powered, the option. Yeah. Thanks a million, Jack.
Jack, stupendous. Thanks a
Pleasure.
million, pal. See you real soon.
Take care.
And thank you very much, Jack Wise. If you get a chance to see that man, trust me, or book him. Just book him. He will come. I don't know if he does the kids' parties anymore, Jared, but it's worth a shot. But if you do get an opportunity, which I no doubt you will, I assume probably the Laughter Lounge will be the most frequent place you'll see him in the public forum, get to see Jack.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. That wasn't just us making him seem funny. He really is funny.
No, he is. He's the only comedian I know that smokes a cigarette indoors on stage as part of his performance, which you're allowed to do by law. Do you know that?
Really?
Yeah, I meant to draw that down with him, but it is I on air. But I asked him about it before, and legally you can use a cigarette, an actual cigarette, not one of those weird kind of herby ones. An actual cigarette. That's why Dave Chappelle gets away with smoking fags on stage indoors. It's
because it's some. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, it doesn't. Hurt the integrity of the work or some such. Regardless of which, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Wise, thank you very much for your time coming on. A couple of fucking stinkers there, pal. We love to hear it. Sorry you went through them, but it just makes great podcast material. As does the rest of our podcast material, Tom, such as the rest of season 6 rolling on with a new episode out on Monday. If you don't want to miss that, then what you need to do is like and subscribe. Am I right?
Absolutely. Follow us on the 2 social platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram, the only 2 really that anybody has any traction or time to watch. And keep up to date with what's coming up. Also, it gives you an opportunity to comment, which people like to do. Comment and tell us.
I love
because
comment.
All of our subjects so far are very much, I suppose, they're not provocative, I suppose the wrong word, but they do draw people to have a chat with us about it. So feel free to reach out and contact us through each one of those.
Absolutely. It's good crack. We're not fucking edgelords. We're just like, hey, look at this. It's good crack. And Monday's episode is right up your alley.
Yeah, it is.
So what the man says, at Tom O'Mahony, at Tom_O'Mahony, at Jerry McBride with a G, that'll get us on Twitter and I dare say Instagram as well. All heading towards the Tom and Jerry Show, at Tom and Jerry Show. Like we say, stick it in fucking Google or whatever search bar is on your social media platform, and if you see a picture that looks like the fucking pair of us, or what you imagine the pair of us look like, 9 times out of 10 it's us. Other than that, Tom, we want them to review. Yes, we love little 5-star reviews, not just for our ego. God knows that needs a stoking here and there too, but it just fucking helps people find us when they look for other better podcasts. We show up in like the 4th in the 4th search.
It is because there's often Google will ask you, do you not mean Jerry with a J? And it's like, no, I absolutely don't. But if you are listening to this in Apple Podcasts or Acast, or what if there's a new one that I don't know about that you're allowed to leave a review, please leave a review. At the very least, give us the 5 stars. And if you can't do any of that, screen grab it and just tell us where you're listening to it. So that post it in your story, post it on Twitter or whatever, tell people about it. It gets to share the good news and bring people to our show, which I suppose without Lee actually listening would be, we'd probably still fucking do it regardless anyway, just to get out.
And you don't even have to be as high tech as that. If you're back in the office now that everything's starting to settle down a little bit, and your co-workers are all like, I fucking hate being back in the office, I'm on the bus for 2 hours a fucking day, I hate it, and you're like, hey, you want to make that journey fly? Pal, co-worker of mine, they gave me Delta 4 weeks back, but I didn't bring it up. Here, listen to the Tom and Jerry podcast. They're good lads. Just that's it. Word of mouth recommendations.
I'm
highly
just
recommend it.
It's not a coincidence that we are screaming to the fore right now with our numbers, and Joe Rogan has stepped aside with a touch of COVID. I'm just saying. I don't think it's a coincidence. I'm just saying. There's probably There's a lot more work goes into our one, most likely, than Joe puts into his one. But sure, look at
Yeah, and up until 2 weeks ago, Tom, I would have said there's a lot more ivermectin in your shed than there is in his, but here we are. Regardless of which, thank you very much for listening to another bonus episode of the Tom and Jerry Show. Good luck it.
Look.